listening to Connections Radio, the sound of business. I'm Louisa Wizzi Magnuson with Niki Hutchison on the business of getting booked. Niki Hutchison works with small businesses and entrepreneurs to get their services fully booked through effective, enjoyable marketing. After studying business and marketing strategy to postgraduate level, Niki joined some of the biggest agencies in London and Edinburgh and developed campaigns for governments, national and international brands, and organisations before setting up her own business in 2021, the Enjoy Marketing Agency. With an impressive track record, Niki has trained the likes of Google and Enterprise Nation and joins me today to discuss the business of getting booked. Welcome to Connections Radio, Niki, and thank you for joining me today. Can you please start by telling me a little more about your professional background?
Of course. Thank you so much for the lovely welcome. So I actually did my first work experience in an ad agency when I was 14 in the strategy department and knew straight away that this was what I wanted to do. So I am absolutely fascinated by the decision-making process and how we can influence that for good as well as for for bad, if we so choose, hopefully not. And then I went on to study business and marketing and then a postgrad in advertising strategy, and then went into the world of creative agencies.
So now you run the Enjoy Marketing Agency. Tell me a little about that.
So I actually started my first business in 2012, and then, which had nothing to do with marketing. The world of agencies and marketing agencies is not always the most welcoming to women, particularly once you've had children. I had a really negative experience, which really affected my confidence. So I left in 2011, knew that I wanted to work for myself, but had lost so much confidence that I didn't feel able to start anything in the field of marketing, despite having spent so many years studying and working in it. So I actually set up a kids hip hop dance company.
Oh, cool.
Not as random as it sounds. When I say using marketing and influencing people for good, a lot of my background comes from working on government campaigns. And I did a 2-year research project into, this was before I left my final agency, into how to reduce antisocial behaviour amongst children and young people in Scotland. And the findings were that children need an activity that they love and a really strong role model. Hopefully both, but one will do.
Absolutely.
So I thought, I can do that. My children were young at the time and it really fitted into our lifestyle. So I ran that business. And then after 5 years, realized, hey, it's my marketing skills that I've used to grow this business from one teacher delivering one class to a team of 40 delivering all over Scotland. Maybe I do know a little bit about marketing. Maybe I could get back into marketing. So at that point, I started working with people one-to-one, other women looking to grow their own businesses. And then in 2021, we formalized, well, 2019 actually, I incorporated the agency. And in 2021, my husband came on board and we hired a full-time member of the team, and we work with, so we're a very agile team. We have 3 members of staff, and then we work with a team of trusted contractors, most of whom I've known from my agency days, people who've also gone freelance for their own reasons as well. So we deliver, everything is rooted in strategy. We deliver projects from brand strategy, market research, right the way through to marketing strategy and implementation.
Fantastic. I love the particular thing I love about that story is that you got your confidence back, and now it sounds like you've made a huge success of being an entrepreneur and running your own business. I think that's a lovely story, and I love music, so I love the hip hop connection. That's great. What are the biggest marketing challenges that small businesses currently face?
So right now, what I'm seeing, and I think this has been a shift since the pandemic. During the pandemic, we all had, well, we felt like, lots of us felt like we had, actually, that is absolutely wrong. I'm not going to make that claim. That comes from a position of my own situation during the pandemic, which I know was not the norm. My position in the pandemic was that I worked full time. My husband was a professional DJ and music producer and lost all of his work overnight. So he took on all of the childcare, all of the cooking, and I just got my head down and grew the business. I
Wow.
understand that was not the normal, particularly for most women. However, what did happen during the pandemic was that people had access to funding. They perhaps had furlough money that they wanted to invest. They perhaps had some time if they were on furlough. Or had some grants and things. So there was this real bubble in online learning. I don't know if you were part of that or
I
saw
was
that.
I was actually made redundant and then got my
Mhm.
job on Connections Radio about a month later. And I set up Minds Anonymous, my mental health initiative, during the kind of few weeks that I wasn't working. So I was never furloughed, but after everybody else went back to work, I was actually made redundant, which I was a little bit upset about, shall we say.
Yeah,
But then my dream job sort of fell in my lap. And so,
great.
swings and roundabouts, right?
So huge changes for you as there
Yeah.
were for so many people, yeah. But what we saw was that people were all of a sudden really keen to take their businesses online. So we were getting loads of agency clients who wanted to do exactly that, who had seen us do that. We were launching courses and getting big cohorts of people coming through these courses. And what I think has changed now is that people are realizing, okay, I can sign up for these courses and lots of them are great. And if you commit and you make the time to do them, those are great. But actually, when it comes to marketing your business, what you really have to do is commit the time. You don't need to buy another course, probably. There are plenty of resources out there. Or if you are going to buy the course, then make sure you make the time to implement it.
And
Um,
how do you know with all of these online courses that spring up, how do you know which ones are quality and which ones are ones you could do standing on your head that you really don't need to spend the money on?
So, first of all, I would interrogate the person who is hosting the course in the nicest possible way. Do your due diligence, ask them all the questions, and listen to your gut. I've invested in things in the past and I've made mistakes. And if I had actually listened to my gut, I would have known, I bought an email marketing course from somebody. We specialize in email marketing. Why did I buy that course?
Bless
Because
you.
it was shiny and I was blown away.
Is that a problem
Luckily,
with
yeah.
marketing that a lot of marketing is this shiny I mean, is there a lot of false advertising going on in the marketing world, not the advertising world, but do you think a lot of people are polishing perhaps things that aren't supposed to be polished and it's is that a challenge?
100%. Yeah,
Mm.
100% they are. And this is what I mean about doing your due diligence. So, to me, if somebody has grown a business purely off the back of teaching you how to grow a business and has never actually grown their own business, apart from this one where they're teaching you how to grow yours, that's a red flag to me. So look for
Yeah.
people who've done the work, who've grown a business like yours, who've studied the foundations, who are not just spouting off the latest Instagram trends that they've heard on Instagram,
Mm.
or the latest quick fix to use TikTok to generate 10K a month. Um,
It,
Financially led marketing is a problem for me as well.
okay, when you say financially led marketing, do you mean like sponsored ads, things like that?
No, what I mean is people promising you or hinting that if you follow their methodology, you are going to make as much money as them. So where they're sharing screenshots of Stripe statements, all those kinds of things that feel a bit icky, but you can get caught up in it and think, oh wow, well if they can do it, then I must be able to do it. Hopefully you can do it, but are they actually going to teach you how to do it?
It's similar with
Don't know.
coaching, don't you think? I mean, there's so many business coaches and life coaches out there, and a lot of them, I think, are doing sort of 6 week courses in coaching, but they haven't run businesses themselves. I think there's a real danger going on here. Also, I was wondering, have the challenges business face changed in marketing since you first entered the industry 20 years ago?
Oh yeah, completely. When I first started, there was no social media, for example.
Exactly, yeah.
There was not this same approach. I mean, the marketing that we're doing as online businesses today is actually very similar to direct marketing or direct mail from back in the day. You know, there's this focus on uh, automations and customer journey, and that is very technical, and it's a great way to do your marketing because it is trackable. Um, but it's hard to get your head around, right? If you're a business owner and your background isn't marketing, then it feels like a lot. And that combined with the pressure of often feeling as if you have to show up on social media every single day, but not really feeling A, that you want to, potentially, lots of people don't want to, and B, that you know what to say because you actually don't know what your strategy is.
I think you make such a good point with strategy. A lot of people are sort of, I did the business of marketing actually with a guy from America. And he said a lot of people spray and pray and they're just
Yeah.
posting mediocre content sort of 6 times a day on every channel all the time.
Mm.
It's not direct, it's not engaging with the people that are actually going to turn into paying clients. How do you make sure that you're marketing the right content in the right place to the right people at the right time? Is that what you specialize in and what you can offer to teach businesses and entrepreneurs?
Yeah, exactly that. But for me, it's about rewinding it one step back. So rather than thinking, what am I going to say in my marketing today? It's about first thinking, what is the outcome that I'm trying to generate? So if you don't have very clear offers that you want to sell, that's going to make your marketing harder. If you don't have clear ways for people to engage with you. So before you can sell people anything, you have to build some sort of relationship. And some of that may be automated, some of that may be in person, some of that may be online. Doesn't really matter. You have to have what we would have called back in the day customer journey, now called a funnel. You have to spend time developing these funnels, but you have to think, not just how am I going to get this person to sign up to my email list or to buy my thing, whatever the outcome is that you want. But first of all, what is that outcome that I want in my business? And why is that relevant to the people who I'm trying to attract? Excuse
So
me.
it's okay. So it sounds like a lot of it is really working backwards from outcome to first steps. And do a lot of people get strategy wrong? Do a lot of people ignore strategy in their marketing, do you think?
Yes, because nobody wants to spend time on strategy because it's much more fun thinking about, oh,
Yeah.
what video am I going to create or what post can I craft today? Um, how can I put myself out there? And it's not as sexy, shall we say, to do the hard thinking because it is hard thinking about strategy. You know, it's a brain strain to spend the day thinking about your strategy, but it is so rewarding and it will massively improve the results that you achieve.
So when it comes to strategy and marketing itself, what's your process with your clients? Like, for example, how do you onboard new clients? Do you have questionnaires, quizzes? Do you interview them? Do they interview you? How does that all work?
Yep, we have a quiz that's hosted on a tool called ScoreUp. And we also have onboarding forms. We use Google Drive, Google Suite to power our business. So we have various different onboarding forms. If we're going to be working with a client in the agency, for example, it's really important to us to make sure that they have brand guidelines and tone of voice in place before we start working with them. Or if they don't, we can develop those for them. So we have questionnaires to ask all of those kinds of questions. But the most important question for me is, what are you looking to achieve? And
Yeah.
then we can get really clear on whether we're the right people to help them. And we don't specialize in paid ads, for example. So if somebody wants to learn how to use paid ads or has a has is absolutely determined that paid ads is going to be the answer, then we will work with partners or pass them on to our recommended suppliers to do that kind of thing. So we're always very clear on what we can help with, and we will help with the strategy and certain elements of the implementation, like launching, etc.
Important would you say? I mean, I think I know the answer to this, but how important is marketing and strategy and everything we're discussing in the actual booking up of one's calendar when you're an entrepreneur or a small business? This is the business of getting booked. It's what we're discussing. How how important is all this in getting fully booked for your business?
So obviously, I'm going to say it's absolutely vital, but
I
I'm
thought you
not really
might.
trying to rather than trying to convince people of why it's vital, I would flip that on its head and say, okay, if you're not going to do any marketing for your business, what are you going to do?
Mm.
What does that leave? It doesn't
That's a
leave
very
much,
good
does it?
question. I'm speechless, and that's very unusual for me. How does your
Um,
pricing work? Do you offer bespoke packages to companies and businesses, or do you sort of charge a flat fee, a flat hourly rate? How does that all work?
So we try not to, sometimes we'll do day rates if we're working with a client longer term. We don't do hourly. And we offer bespoke, we're very bespoke on the agency side of the business. I keep referring to the agency side. So I also offer certain services and programs and things under my own name. And then we have the agency, which is Enjoy Marketing. And our clients on the agency side are all completely different. The outcome that they're looking to achieve is generally they want to make more sales or they want to get fully booked. But their businesses are completely different. So we will price accordingly. So, for example, our ideal scenario and that customer journey within our business is to bring somebody on at the very beginning. We'll conduct some market research with the audiences that we feel they need to reach, or perhaps even audiences that they've tried to reach and have failed in the past. We'll gather all those lovely insights that will then feed into the brand strategy, and we'll work on their positioning and their messaging and so on. Then we'll bring in one of our designers. We'll work on their visual identity. So what they're going to look, we'll work on what they're going to sound like online. And our designer will work on what they're going to look like online. We'll bring it all together and they have their strategy ready to go. And then we'll move on to their marketing strategy. What is that business objective that they're trying to achieve, and how are we going to use different types of marketing to achieve that objective? And then sometimes we'll go on. So I do some CMO work. So sometimes we'll go on and I'll stay and I'll work with their marketing teams for X amount of time per month. Or sometimes they will want us to do the implementation for them. So we'll design their new website, for example. Yeah, so all very different
So
according to the client.
definitely not a cookie cutter approach.
Absolutely not.
Sounds good. How can people go about streamlining their marketing efforts? Maybe you've got a few quick tips for us for maximum impact with minimum spend, because we're discussing an awful lot here. We're discussing branding and
Mm.
website design, and it sounds like an awful lot for somebody to get their head around, or potentially a lot of investment to get right. So, how do you keep the cost down for your clients, and what would your advice be to people that are doing it themselves?
So if you're doing it yourself, I would follow that same process. Think, what do I look like online? What do I sound like online? And if that's not consistent, then how can I make that consistent? So, for example, on the Niki Hutchison side of the business, I talk a lot about going from overlooked to fully booked. That's one of my key messages. What would I'm asking this to the listeners, what would your key message be? Now, that key message comes from listening to what my clients were telling me. So a few years ago, I ran a 6-week program, and the feedback from multiple people who went through that program was, when I first started working with Niki, I didn't have enough clients. And by the end of it, I was fully booked. So that's where that insight came from, and that has turned into my messaging. So I would encourage you to listen to, I call it going detective mode. People are telling you things all the time. They might not be telling you as obviously as they were in that, the client feedback forms that I'm talking about there, but they will be dropping clues about how you help them, what they need from you, what their biggest problems are just now. So I know, for example, just now, the biggest problem for a lot of the solopreneurs and small businesses who want to work with us is that they don't have time. They don't have time to do, they've bought courses, they felt let down, they haven't finished them, they maybe don't trust themselves. They need support to actually implement their marketing. So that's why we have we're just starting a new initiative actually on Mondays for where people can come along for free with me, and our marketing manager will be there on the call, and we have a worksheet that you can focus on. You can ask us questions. You can actually spend time implementing. So that's one of the biggest issues. So if you're doing the marketing yourself, I would try and ask yourself, what are the biggest issues that my potential customers are having just now? That will feed into the messages that you want to put out there, and how you're going to communicate the way that you can help them. And then also have a think. I mean, to lots of us, it's obvious, I would say, if you are trying to go for corporates, you want to be on LinkedIn. If you are a more creative business and you're very visual, you probably want to be on Instagram. These are sweeping generalizations. I would need to look at each individual case, but you probably know from running your business already where the places are that your ideal customers are hanging out, and make sure that you're turning up there and going detective mode, doing that listening, and then letting them know how you can help.
That sounds like fantastic advice. Brilliant. I would like to talk about audio now, and audio as a marketing tool. I hear you run a podcast. Tell me about
I
that.
do. So I have a podcast called From Overlooked to Fully Booked.
I love that.
And I actually have a program called Fully Booked Bootcamp, and it is based on a framework that I developed called the Bright framework. There are 6 stages, one for each letter of Bright. And in this podcast, I'm taking you through each of those stages in podcast format. And I'm also interviewing lots of high profile online business owners as guests as well. I just love podcasts. This is my 3rd podcast, and I love interviewing, actually. If I could do what you do all day as a job, I might consider it. I love it.
It's the best. It's absolutely the best. It's my dream job. So yeah, fully back you on that. What format does it take? So it's interview based, and it goes, I've already asked you what format it takes. Where do you publish your podcast? How can we find it?
So we publish the podcast essentially everywhere. So there's a pod follow link that I think we'll put in the show notes.
Sure.
You can also find it on my website, which is nikihutchison.com/podcast. You'll see my previous podcast is on there as well. And it goes out weekly, and we rotate between a solo episode one week and a guest episode the next.
That sounds fantastic. How do you market your podcast? Very important question. And why do you think audio is an effective marketing media?
In my experience of hosting podcasts, it's a very quick way for people to go from not knowing who you are. So they first become aware of you, they discover your podcast, and then that customer journey is shortened, and it's much quicker for them to become a client. I think it's because, well, if you're showing up every week, they begin to trust you. We release our podcast at the same time every week, Friday at 7 a.m. We've never missed one. In my first podcast started in 2021. So I think that people trust you if you make that commitment publicly that you're going to show up at a certain time and you're going to do this, and then you actually do it. But in relation to podcasts specifically, I think it's about keeping people company as they go about their life.
Oh, that's nice.
So I don't really watch video courses anymore. I'm a prolific learner, lifetime learner, lifelong learner. I'm sure lots of listeners are as well. But I don't want to watch video courses anymore. I want to listen to them in my ears as I'm driving my car, walking my dog, whatever.
Doing the washing up.
I want them, I want them to fit into my life. So that's why I love doing a podcast as well, because I love to think of my podcast fitting into people's lives.
That all sounds fantastic. Niki Hutchison, thank you for joining me on the business of getting booked. Where can we follow you online, gain marketing tips, and get in touch for more information?
So obviously you can listen to my podcast From Overlooked to Fully Booked. And I am found almost every day on LinkedIn. My name, Niki Hutchison, awkward spelling. So do check the episode title.
Now, why would you say that? It's not that I got it wrong at all, is it?
Most people do. And I'm also on Instagram. So those are my two favorite channels, LinkedIn and Instagram, under my name, Niki Hutchison.
Fantastic. Niki Hutchison, once again, thank you for joining me on the business of getting booked. We will see you on Instagram. We will see you on LinkedIn. And thank you for your time today. It's been a really interesting discussion. Have a lovely day.
Thank you so much for having me, Louisa. Have a great day.